What happens when royal blood collides with unapologetic candor in the most exposed way imaginable? You get a moment that stopped mid-morning comfort zones and left Prince Harry retreating from the view set, tears in his eyes, his composure shredded. And trust me, you don't want to miss a second of this breakdown. It's more than drama, it's a study in power, vulnerability, and breaking points. Before we unpack every tense moment, hit subscribe, smash that like button, and share your thoughts in the comments because this is one emotional roller coaster you'll want to talk about. Was Harry pushed too far? Or did he walk away in self-respect? The stage is a polished newsroom set bathed in morning light. The view is in mid-discussion, colorful mugs on the table, the usual mix of panelists talking politics and pop culture. Then it's Harry's turn. He answers the first question smoothly, voices a message of unity and healing. He seems guarded but steady. That calm only lasts a minute. Whoopi Goldberg leans forward, eyes fixed. Harry, she says, you talk often about mental health. You speak of healing. But in your memoir and interviews, you also talk about abandonment, feeling rejected by your family. How do you reconcile asking for help when you've publicly exposed them? The temperature shifts. The panelists ease back. This is no longer a light moment. Harry's brow furrows. His smile thins. I feel like it's important to be honest, he begins, voice soft. I needed to share what I went through, the struggles. I hope it helps others. Whoopi holds his gaze. Yes, but you chose to take those stories public release Netflix specials, countless interviews. You carried family pain into the spotlight. Did you carry enough grief? Or did you carry privilege? Something in Harry gives. His eyes glisten. The room constricts. He tries to respond, voice cracking. I know I have privilege, but that doesn't erase the hurt. Whoopi doesn't relent. Privilege isn't a shield. It's a context. And when you use that context to air your family's secrets, to gain sympathy, you need to answer whether that's healing or branding. Across the panel, Sunny mouths the question, branding. Joy leans in, tension in her posture. Even the audience is silent, sensing the emotional gravity. Harry's cheeks redden. His voice falters. I've worked so hard to be vulnerable, to take responsibility. Not for sympathy, but for truth. Whoopi's expression is both compassionate and unyielding. She doesn't smile. She doesn't shift tone. She waits. Yet when critics challenge your motives, you've retreated before. You rarely take calls from tabloid shows. You've canceled TV spots when the questioning got tough. So, yes, she pauses. I'm asking, if you can't face uncomfortable scrutiny, then how deep is this healing? The words hang heavy. We see Harry blink back tears. His jaw trembles. He shakes his head, swallowing. Then he stands. I'm sorry, but his voice breaks. He looks around, visible conflict flashing in his eyes. I can't keep doing this. The next moment, a wheeled mix stand trembles. Harry walks off toward the green room, nearly stumbling. For the first time, the royal veneer cracks, revealing raw human fragility. Silence grips the studio. The camera holds on his empty chair, then cuts back to stunned panelists. Whoopi briefly squeezes her own mug and says he needs to step away. Joy is speechless. The show spirals. That moment, Harry, leaving in tears, instantly went global. Clips flooded social media. Emotional music backed reaction reels. Harry breaks, Whoopi wins, climbed the trends. Was it sympathy? Or schadenfreude? Hard to tell. But one thing was clear. Something powerful just happened. We'll revisit those clips, those raw tears, and unpack how one question pushed a prince and whether the view crossed a line. But first, ask yourself, can privilege ever excuse emotional collapse in public? Because in that silence, both the audience and the studio got their answer. The fallout from Prince Harry's emotional departure from The View didn't stay in that studio. It exploded outward across television networks, internet forums, podcasts, and the inevitable tidal wave of social media commentary. Within minutes of the broadcast, the phrase "Prince Harry cries on The View" was trending across Twitter, Reddit, and TikTok. The memes came fast, the speculation faster. But beneath the noise was a much deeper current of debate. What exactly happened? Was this a takedown or a moment of truth? Let's rewind to what happened just before the commercial break. After Whoopi's intense line of questioning, Harry had physically walked off the set. The production team scrambled. The camera cut to Joy Behar, who looked genuinely shaken. "We didn't mean to cause harm," she muttered off script. Sonny Hostin tried to smooth things over. "We ask questions because the public deserves nuance." "That's not disrespect, it's discourse." But the unease was visible. Meghan McCain, who had already exited the show months before, even posted cryptically on X, formerly Twitter, "This is why The View still matters. We don't do softballs." Backstage reports say Harry sat alone for over 15 minutes in the dressing room, not speaking. His team, 2 publicists and a Netflix rep, gathered around. They reportedly argued quietly about whether to return to set or leave immediately. One source, anonymously quoted by a producer, claimed Harry said, "This is why I never wanted to do this kind of media again." The exhaustion was real. The toll was obvious. When he did finally leave the building, he exited through the service corridor, not the front. Cameras still caught him getting into a black SUV. No smile. No wave. No statement. Just a 1,000-yard stare. Within hours, British tabloids were already spinning it. "Prince in tears on American TV," read one headline. Another Whoopi breaks the spare. The Sun, the Daily Mail, and even BBC picked it up, with pundits questioning whether Harry was truly prepared for the world stage he keeps stepping onto. Was he the victim of emotional sabotage, or a man still uncomfortable being challenged? Meanwhile, back in the U.S., the commentary split into 2 camps. One defended Harry with passion. They argued that mental health should never be weaponized, that his vulnerability on air was courageous, not weak. Celebrities like Demi Lovato and Jamila Jamil posted support, reminding the public that crying doesn't mean you lost it, means you're human. Their words echoed in corners of the internet that have long seen Harry not as a prince, but as a man who walked away from toxic tradition to pursue healing. But others weren't as forgiving. Conservative commentators leapt at the moment. Ben Shapiro called the incident peak victim culture, saying, "If you're going to go on TV and sell your trauma, be ready to answer questions about it." Piers Morgan, ever the royal antagonist, took to his show and gleefully declared he couldn't handle The View. What's he going to do when real life hits? Even former press secretaries weighed in, with one stating, "This is why media training isn't just about Polish, it's about preparation." The most fascinating analysis, however, came from unexpected places: psychologists, body language experts, and former media advisors. They began breaking down the footage frame by frame. One viral video by a clinical therapist examined Harry's blinking pattern, posture, and micro-expressions. Her conclusion? What you saw was a man trying desperately to maintain a mask. That mask cracked not because he's weak, but because he's wounded. And then came the ripple effect on the royal family itself. Buckingham Palace issued no formal statement, but palace insiders whispered that this was another embarrassment, and that King Charles was deeply concerned about his son's well-being. One royal expert speculated, Harry's public persona is unraveling, and without Meghan by his side on this appearance, his vulnerability was on full display. It's worth noting Meghan wasn't present, and that absence spoke volumes. Whether it was a strategic choice or a scheduling conflict, her not being there gave the public a rare view of Harry alone, unguarded, and very, very human. As media coverage reached fever pitch, some journalists began asking bigger questions. Was this just a sensational headline, or was it indicative of something much larger? Are we witnessing the slow undoing of the Harry and Meghan media machine? Or are we finally seeing the cost of emotional exposure on a global stage? Perhaps the most poignant response came from an unexpected place, Trevor Noah. On The Daily Show, he reflected, "We ask for honesty, we beg for vulnerability, but then we punish people when they give it to us." Maybe the question isn't, why did Harry cry? Maybe it's, why can't we handle it when someone does? That sentiment resonated far and wide. Because as much as the moment shocked and polarized viewers, it also revealed something universal: the delicate line between authenticity and spectacle, between strength and sensitivity. And it raised a deeper, more uncomfortable truth. What happens when someone whose entire life has been shaped by image finally shatters that image on live TV? The aftermath is still unfolding. But one thing's for sure, this wasn't just a headline, it was a turning point. The days that followed Prince Harry's walk-off on The View were nothing short of chaos. It wasn't just a trending moment anymore, it had become a cultural fault line, igniting debates across generations, political aisles, and even continents. What started as a sharp exchange with Whoopi Goldberg now stood as a referendum on everything from mental health, masculinity, privilege, and even the very concept of monarchy in the modern world. The networks milked it. Every cable outlet looped the same footage: Harry's face tight with emotion, Whoopi's steady gaze, the studio's awkward silence. CNN ran a panel. Fox News ran two. MSNBC brought in psychologists. Even late night, comedians jumped in. Jimmy Kimmel quipped, "Prince Harry came to The View and left with the feels." But behind the laughter was real tension. Because for every viewer that saw bravery in Harry's vulnerability, there was another who saw weakness. A fracture was becoming more visible, not just in how Harry was perceived, but in how Americans now viewed the royals as a whole. Once a source of mystique and class, the monarchy, through Harry and Meghan's stateside presence, had become messier, more exposed, more well-human. And many didn't like that. At the center of it all was Whoopi Goldberg. Her role in the incident came under intense scrutiny. Critics called her combative, disrespectful, too harsh. But her defenders painted a different picture: a seasoned broadcaster doing her job, asking the tough questions with composure and precision. In an Instagram Live later that week, Whoopi addressed the moment without apology. "I didn't yell. I didn't insult him. I asked questions. If a question makes you uncomfortable, maybe there's something inside that needs unpacking, and that's not my fault." That line, "not my fault," trended within minutes. Supporters reposted it. Commentators repeated it. And in that moment, the clash between Harry and Whoopi transformed into something more than celebrity drama. It became symbolic of a deeper disconnect between generations, between institutions, between those born into legacy and those who had to carve their place through fire. Behind the scenes, ABC execs were in damage control mode. According to insider reports, the producers of The View had not expected Harry to react the way he did. In pre-interview discussions, his team had been assured that the tone would remain respectful, but no topic was off-limits. The problem was never the topic, it was how deeply it cut. And while Whoopi remained unfazed, Harry's camp was spinning. His publicists issued a carefully crafted statement the next morning, citing an emotionally charged environment and reiterating his commitment to open, vulnerable conversation. But it didn't help that Meghan still hadn't commented. People noticed. Was she distancing herself? Was she concerned? Or was this just a part of their media strategy? Then came the podcasts. Oh, the podcasts. Overnight, dozens of episodes sprang up, analyzing the moment frame by frame. Former royal staffers, mental health advocates, comedians, ex-therapists, all with opinions. And in their eyes, this wasn't just about Prince Harry. It was about what happens when people raised in protected, elite bubbles enter a world that demands accountability. But not all voices were critical. In fact, some of the most powerful responses came from people who felt seen. One video from a military veteran went viral. In it, he said, "I've been through trauma. I've served. I've broken down. What I saw in Harry wasn't weakness. It was someone carrying weight we don't see. And when you're finally called out publicly, globally, that armor can crack. I don't blame him for breaking. I respect him for showing up at all." That perspective shifted the conversation again. Suddenly, the discourse wasn't just about whether Harry had failed to man up or handle pressure. It became a conversation about the double standards men face when expressing emotion, especially men in the public eye. Meanwhile, palace reaction remained muted but icy. Royal insiders leaked to British tabloids that the Queen, or at least her inner circle, was dismayed. Charles, now king, reportedly found the moment undignified. William was, as usual, disappointed. But even the palace couldn't ignore that the institution itself was part of the reason Harry ended up there. Because the truth is, Harry wasn't just reacting to Whoopi. He was reacting to a lifetime of suppression. The strain of carrying trauma, loss, identity crises, and international pressure without the support of a system he was born into, that's the real weight that cracked on that stage. And then, like a slow-burning fuse, the reactions began to morph. More celebrities came forward. Oprah Winfrey offered quiet support on her Instagram. Viola Davis commented on the double standards. Black women like Whoopi face when being assertive. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson posted cryptically about real strength, not always being loud. Public sentiment, once divided, now began to shift toward understanding. Because underneath the firestorm, the moment revealed something everyone could relate to: the fear of not being understood, the fear of being seen as fragile, the shame of letting your guard down and the public pile-on that follows. But that's not where the story ends. Because just as the narrative was beginning to calm, Harry himself did something no one expected. He posted a video, not through a news outlet, not in a sit-down interview, but on his own Instagram. In it, he sat alone. No polished lighting, no makeup, just him. And for 2 minutes, he spoke. "I wasn't ready for what happened that day," he said. But maybe that's the point. Maybe we're never ready for moments that reveal who we are: raw, emotional, unfiltered. I don't regret being vulnerable. I regret that we still live in a world where that's seen as weakness. And just like that, the conversation turned again. Was it a PR move? Maybe, but it was effective. Because it reminded everyone that behind the palace gates, the media headlines, the titles, and the trauma, there's just a man trying to make sense of himself in a world that keeps asking for more. And sometimes, when the pressure gets too loud, the only thing you can do is walk off the stage. The days turned into weeks, and the shockwaves of Prince Harry's walk-off continued to ripple far beyond that now infamous episode of The View. What had started as a fiery moment between royalty and real talk evolved into something far more enduring: a cultural litmus test for how we handle discomfort, privilege, mental health, and accountability. What really made the entire situation linger in the public consciousness wasn't just the walk-off itself. It was what came afterward. Conversations on cable news and social media began to take a turn. They moved away from quick reactions and toward deeper questions. What happens when institutions meet individuality? When lived experience collides with public expectation, and when people we place on pedestals reveal their humanity raw, uncomfortable, and unfiltered? In the aftermath, The View didn't shy away from the drama. Instead, it leaned in. On the very next episode, the hosts tackled the moment head-on. Whoopi Goldberg, measured but firm, addressed the situation in her opening remarks. "I didn't want to hurt anyone. That was never the goal. But if asking a question makes someone walk off set, maybe the issue isn't the question, maybe it's what the question reveals." The audience erupted into applause. It was a message heard loud and clear. Not just a defense of her journalistic instincts, but a declaration: tough questions matter, especially when power is involved. Joy Behar chimed in, adding her own spin. Look, he's been through a lot, but he came here knowing who we are. We're not here to pamper royalty, we're here to ask why royalty still expects to be pampered. It was a brutal but honest sentiment that many viewers resonated with. Still, not everyone agreed. Online battle lines were drawn. Hashtags supporting both Harry and Whoopi circulated with equal force. Justice for Harry trended alongside Stand with Whoopi. Supporters of Harry argued that he had been cornered, that mental health isn't always predictable, and that we should be more compassionate. Critics countered that accountability is not an attack and privilege doesn't vanish just because someone speaks vulnerably. But the story didn't end there. Less than a month later, Harry and Meghan were spotted in public again, this time at a mental health summit in New York. Cameras captured Harry looking subdued, thoughtful, and more private than usual. No public statement was made, no press conference held. Just an appearance subtle, intentional. Back in London, however, the royal family wasn't so quiet. Reports emerged that King Charles had been deeply embarrassed by Harry's televised meltdown. Insiders claimed that William had refused to comment, but privately fumed over the stain on the family's image. British tabloids ran headlines that were as dramatic as ever. Prince in peril. The crown cracks again. Whoopi's royal wreck. But even in the chaos, a more nuanced narrative was beginning to form. Because despite the spectacle, people couldn't ignore one glaring truth. This wasn't just about Harry or Whoopi. It was about us. About how we, as a culture, demand openness and then punish vulnerability. How we praise authenticity, but only when it fits within our comfort zone, and how we're still not sure what to do when someone breaks under pressure, especially when they were raised not to show it. Behind the scenes, networks scrambled to manage fallout. ABC issued a careful statement reaffirming its commitment to difficult conversations with empathy. Harry's representatives announced a temporary break from interviews. Meghan, ever the strategist, remained mostly silent, a choice that only fueled speculation about their internal dynamics. But while others scrambled, Whoopi stood still. She didn't apologize. She didn't backtrack. She simply remained firm in her belief that sometimes the truth stings, and that's okay. Her stance didn't just resonate with her fan base. It became emblematic of a larger shift in public consciousness, especially among women of color, who saw in Whoopi's restraint a kind of strength long dismissed or misunderstood. One viral TikTok said it best. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't attack him. She just didn't flinch when privilege pushed back. And that made people uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Harry's supporters pushed back just as hard. Therapists and trauma experts flooded the airwaves and timelines with takes on emotional safety, trigger responses, and the cost of public vulnerability. Articles were published in The Atlantic, Psychology Today, and The Guardian dissecting the psychology of what happened in that studio. Was it fair? Was it avoidable? Could it have been handled differently? And slowly, the narrative softened, not in intensity but in texture. People stopped asking whose fault was it and began asking, what does this teach us? Because at its core, the clash wasn't a scandal. It was a mirror, a reflection of the uncomfortable questions we're all grappling with. Can someone born into power ever fully understand powerlessness? Does trauma excuse entitlement? Can we ask hard questions without being labeled as aggressors? And when someone finally breaks, do we reach out or retreat? By the time Harry re-emerged on social media weeks later with another heartfelt video, the conversation had evolved. In the clip, he appeared alone again, but this time, calmer. The setting was casual, a sunlit backyard, birds faintly audible in the background. No dramatic lighting. No filters. Just honesty. I've learned a lot these past few weeks, he said, about myself, about others, about how we talk or don't talk when emotions rise. I don't regret the moment. I regret not being ready for it. But I am learning, and I hope we all are. It was short, sincere, and powerful. Reactions were mixed as always. Some called it redemption. Others rolled their eyes. But the moment mattered because it wasn't performative. It was, perhaps, for the first time real. And as for Whoopi, she didn't respond to the video directly. But on her next episode of The View, she ended the show with a line that felt unmistakably intentional. Growth doesn't always look graceful, but it's still growth. See y'all tomorrow. And just like that, life went on. The cameras moved on to the next controversy. The algorithms shifted to the next viral moment. But what still lingers is the lesson. Sometimes it takes a royal, a talk show, and a clash of worldviews to remind us that empathy and truth aren't enemies, they're necessary co-pilots on the messy road to understanding. And sometimes it takes walking off the stage to finally be heard.